Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about how to speak English like a native speaker. If you've been learning English for a while, you probably want to sound more natural and confident when speaking. And you're in the right place. I'm going to share some simple and effective tips that will help you improve your speaking skills and sound more like a native speaker. Don't worry, this won't be difficult. These tips are easy to follow, and I'm sure they will help you. 1. Practice speaking every day. If you want to speak English like a native, the first thing you need to do is practice every day. It doesn't matter if you're not perfect right away. What's important is to practice regularly. You can practice by speaking with a friend, using language exchange apps, or even speaking to yourself. For example, when you're doing something like cleaning or cooking, talk about what you're doing in English. You could say, "I'm washing the dishes now," or "I'm chopping vegetables." The more you speak, the better you will become. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Even native speakers make mistakes. What matters is that you keep practicing. 2. Listen to native speakers. To speak like a native speaker, you need to listen to native speakers. Listening is so important because it helps you learn how people speak in real life. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, or follow YouTube channels where people speak English naturally. Try to pay attention to how they pronounce words, their tone of voice, and how fast they speak. This will help you understand how to use English in conversations and make your speaking more natural. 3. Learn common phrases and expressions. One thing that really helped me improve my English was learning common phrases and expressions that native speakers use in everyday conversations. For example, instead of always saying, "How are you?" you can learn to say, "What's up?" or "How's it going?" These are more natural ways of asking how someone is, and they are commonly used by native speakers. Learning these common expressions will make you sound more natural. So, I recommend learning a few new phrases every day and practicing them in your conversations. 4. Don't focus too much on grammar. When I first started speaking English, I focused too much on perfect grammar. But I quickly learned that native speakers don't always speak with perfect grammar. They often use contractions, like "I'm" instead of "I am," shorten words, or leave out small words in casual conversations. For example, "I don't know" might sound like "dunno" in fast speech. While grammar is important, it's also important to focus on how people actually speak. Don't stress over every little mistake. Just focus on having a natural conversation. Over time, your grammar will improve. But don't let it stop you from speaking. Use natural intonation and rhythm. Another tip for sounding like a native speaker is to work on your intonation and rhythm. Intonation is the rise and fall of your voice when you speak. Native speakers use a lot of intonation in their speech, which makes the conversation sound more natural and lively. For example, when you ask a question, your voice usually goes up at the end. Try to listen to how native speakers change their voice when they speak, and practice copying them. You should also pay attention to rhythm. English has its own rhythm, and native speakers often stress certain words in a sentence. For example, in the sentence, "I really like English," the word "really" is stressed. Pay attention to how native speakers stress words in a sentence, and try to copy that rhythm when you speak. 6. Expand your vocabulary. If you want to speak like a native, it's important to have a large vocabulary. You don't need to know every word in English, but learning new words every day will help you express yourself more easily. For example, instead of always saying good, you could use words like fantastic, amazing, or great. Native speakers often use different words to make their speech more interesting. To learn new vocabulary, try reading books, listening to podcasts, or watching TV shows in English. Every time you hear a new word, try to learn its meaning and practice using it in sentences. The more words you know, the more confident you will be when speaking. 7. Mimic native speakers. One of the easiest ways to improve your speaking skills is to mimic native speakers. This is called shadowing. It's when you listen to a sentence or a phrase and immediately repeat it out loud. You try to copy the pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm exactly as the native speaker says it. For example, you can watch a scene from a movie and pause it after each sentence. Then, repeat what the character said, trying to copy their voice and tone. This helps you improve your pronunciation and sound more natural when speaking. 8. Speak slowly and clearly. Another mistake I made when learning English was speaking too quickly. At first, I wanted to speak quickly, like native speakers, but I realized that it's better to speak slowly and clearly at first. If you speak too fast, people might not understand you, and you might make mistakes. When you speak slowly, you have time to think about the words you want to say. This also gives you time to pronounce words more clearly. Once you feel more confident, you can start speaking faster, but make sure your speech is still clear. 9. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. One of the biggest challenges when speaking English is the fear of making mistakes. But you have to remember that everyone makes mistakes. Native speakers make mistakes too. The important thing is not to be afraid of making them. Instead, focus on learning from them and improving. If you don't understand something, it's okay to ask the other person to repeat it. If you make a mistake, just keep talking. The more you practice, the fewer mistakes you'll make. 10. Stay confident and positive. Finally, to speak like a native speaker, you need to stay confident and positive. It's easy to get discouraged, especially when you feel like you're not improving. But learning a language takes time, and the more you practice, the better you'll get. Keep a positive attitude. Even if things seem difficult, celebrate your progress, no matter how small it is. Stay confident and remember that the more you practice speaking, the more natural and fluent you will become. 11. Use real-life conversations to practice. If I were to start learning English again, I would make sure to practice in real-life conversations as much as possible. Listening to podcasts or watching TV shows is great, but real conversations with native speakers are a whole different experience. The best way to learn how native speakers talk is to actually speak with them. I would try to join language exchange groups or talk to friends who are native speakers. You can learn how people use English in real situations, like using slang or shortening words. So don't just study, get out there and have real conversations. 12. Focus on pronunciation and accent. A big part of sounding like a native speaker is working on your pronunciation and accent. It's not enough to just know the words. You need to pronounce them correctly. If I were starting from scratch, I would pay more attention to the sounds of English, like the th sound, which can be tricky. I would also practice stressing the right words in a sentence. Native speakers don't just say all the words equally. They stress certain words for emphasis. By improving your pronunciation, you'll sound more natural and easier to understand. Don't be afraid to repeat after native speakers and mimic their accents. 13. Learn phrasal verbs and idioms. Native speakers use a lot of phrasal verbs and idioms that are not always easy to understand. These are phrases like take off when a plane leaves the ground, or break the ice to start a conversation. If I started learning again, I would focus on learning these expressions because they make English sound more natural. Idioms and phrasal verbs are used all the time in casual conversations. By learning these, you'll sound more like a native speaker. For example, instead of saying, I like it very much, you can say, I'm crazy about it. It's more natural and fun. 14. Engage in English activities you enjoy. Learning English doesn't always have to feel like work. Engage in activities you enjoy that involve English. For example, if you love watching movies, try watching English films with English subtitles. If you like reading, read English books or online articles about topics you enjoy. The more fun it is, the more you'll be motivated to keep going. You can even find hobbies in English, like cooking from English recipe blogs, playing video games with English instructions, or listening to music in English. When learning becomes enjoyable, you won't even notice how quickly you're improving. 15. Be patient and keep going. Finally, the most important thing I would tell myself if I started learning English again is to be patient. Learning a language takes time, and you won't become fluent overnight. There will be days when you feel frustrated, but it's important to keep going. Set small goals for yourself and celebrate every little achievement. Even if you just learn one new word a day, that's progress. Remember, the more you practice, the better you will become. So, stay motivated and keep practicing. With time, your English will improve, and you'll feel more comfortable speaking like a native speaker. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope these tips help you speak English more like a native speaker. Keep practicing, stay positive, and enjoy the process of learning. I'll see you in the next episode.